You're listening to the Audacious Church podcast. This message was recorded live at our Chester campus. We know this is a great investment into your life, so tune in, listen up, and stay focused. For any more information, visit us online, audaciouschurch.com.
It's great to be with you. I'm Neil Smith from Planetshakers, for those that don't know me. And I'm part of the trustees board here at Audacious. Have been since the beginning. Preached the first message in this church in a little street called Mary Street in Manchester. And saw this building before you saw it. Walked around with some of the trustees. And so good to see what God is doing. But it's time to go to bigger places, hey? Hey, why don't you grab your seats? Great to see you if you're a guest with us. It's really good to see you, and good to have my friend that I just met, Paul, from Chester. I met his son last week in church and in Australia, and I was reading my itinerary to him, and I showed him on my phone, and he goes, "What are you doing in Chester?" And I said, "Oh, I'm preaching at Audacious," and he said, "My dad lives in Chester," and so his dad came to church today, so it's great to see you, Paul. We just came from Bucharest yesterday in Romania and spoke at the Pentecostal Leaders Conference there, and then the 2 days before that, we were in Krakow, and it was awesome to be, some of you know Zibby and Magna, but we were there for a church planting conference. 18 nations from around Europe were there, and there's some great things that are starting to happen in Europe. Europe was probably dark for a number of years in a whole heap of ways, but there's some great things starting to happen right across your continent, so keep praying and believing. With that in mind, I want to talk to you today, and I'll get to that in a moment, but I was talking to Pastor Glenn yesterday, and he said, just share some of the things that you're doing, and most of you know, I actually spoke from Manchester, but I believe it was beamed here in November last year, and if those who were there can remember, I preached a message called Prayers of Victory, and I was preaching from the perspective of we are victorious, but sometimes our confidence levels go down. And it's important for us to remember that He is our confidence. God's going to come through for us. But I also mentioned Fiji and how we'd planned to go to Fiji and do a national event and working with the new government and the Prime Minister of the nation. And I met the Deputy Prime Minister, and there was a whole God-ordained thing. But there was one thing that wasn't really on board. As a Pentecostal, as many of you are, as I am, there's sometimes the traditional church either gets intimidated or, like racism or other things, sometimes fear of the unknown causes them to be against. They're not really against, but they actually don't know, so they stand back. And the church in Fiji was sort of not really for us, and I was asking the Lord about it, and the Lord said to me, go to Fiji and to this particular conference. The Australian government was hosting a conference in Fiji, and I am a representative of the church in Australia to the South Pacific. In fact, the first ever Pentecostal leader that's been endorsed by our government in Australia. And so I'm involved in this committee of how can we more effectively reach the South Pacific. Partly it's from governments. They're scared of what China might do in that region. So they're trying to work out what they can do. And they've discovered the best way to actually reach those nations is through the church, which is, I see as a little sign that God is wanting to do something. So I'm at this conference, and the Australian government pours about 1.7 billion Australian dollars into that region. And they were talking about it, but they're using the church, particularly in the area of environment. It's being talked about right across governments right now. And because of, different things, they're wanting them to help with disaster relief and different things like that. And they've decided the church is the best instrument because in Fiji, 80% of everybody goes to church on Sunday. And so they decided to work with them. But here's the funny thing. It's the same with English money, your foreign aid and Australian foreign aid and US foreign aid. Your government can't give money to anything to do with evangelization. So anything that is connected to the church, they're not allowed to, by a charter out of Geneva, to give money. Even if it's good work, if it has evangelism connected somehow, then they can't give the money. So they were talking to these guys about it, saying, we want you to help us, and we want all your people, and we want this, but we can't give you any money. And you could feel in the room, the Council of Churches were there from every nation, and they were starting to get angry. So you want to tell us you want to do something with us. I don't know if you've ever been in one of these conversations. You want us to help you, but you don't want to help us. And I was sitting there, and they said they could sense, the Australian government could sense, there's something not right here. So they said, any of the representatives from Australia, if you've got any thoughts on this. So I stood up. Remember, I felt like I didn't want to go to this conference, but I went because I felt like God said, show up. So I sat for 3 days listening to, oh my goodness, some of the most boring sessions I've ever been in my life. And anyway, so now I stand up and I say, look, the problem is that what you're saying is that they call it soft politics. If you can actually get the church on side, then they're going to stay with Australia rather than go to the other side. But what you're saying to these people is that you don't love them, that you don't really like them, but you want to use them. Now, whether you're saying that or not, that's what you're saying. And they're starting to get angry. And then you're saying to them, well, don't talk about the church in your submission for money. Talk about what you're going to do and just leave that to the side. So you're also talking to their integrity as men and women of God. It's not going to work with these people. And the interesting thing is that our government gives $1.7 billion, and these people on average were looking for $30,000 or $40,000 a year. And there was only about 10 of them, so think about that in context. So I said, so just give them the money. Let's work it out. We're Australians, we're smart. Let's do it for them. And then suddenly all the church leaders in the room stood up and started applauding. It was like this most boring meeting. Now they're like, yeah, and I'm like, uh-oh, I've inspired a rebellion here. And I'm representing my own country. But at that moment, nothing changed in that context. The Australian government people came up and said, could you come to Canberra, which is our capital, and could you talk about how we can resolve this tension? And that was sort of the end of the discussion. I go to morning tea and a man walks up to me. He says, sir, I'm from the Fiji Council of Churches. We're in control of 650,000 people in a nation of 850,000. And when I heard you speak today, it inspired me. Now, what I didn't tell you is I wrote to him only 3 months earlier and said, we're coming to Fiji. Could I have a meeting with you? He never wrote back to me. Now, I could have in that moment gone, I'm ticked off with you. I don't want to talk to you. But you see, we've got to understand that sometimes God has a way that's different to our way of thinking. Some of the challenges you're going through right now, maybe God's making a way where there is no way. You just can't see it. But don't give up because God's going to come through. You know, we as a trustee are working with a property across the road and the council is saying all sorts of weird and wonderful things. But it's just the council. God's timing is always perfect, and so we'll walk into what God has purposed for us. And anyway, so this guy says to me, so what do you think we can do? Because we have no money and we need to do something. I said, well, what do you need to do? He said, well, we've got to thank the former leader and we literally have no money to even have a celebration. I said, I'll pay. But the words sort of came out of my mouth, and then I thought, did I just say I'll pay? You know, because the natural was I don't really have much money. In fact, I'm over budget for what we're doing in Fiji now. And so I looked at him and I said, we'll pay. How much? I should have said how much and then thought about whether I'll pay. And he said, we need about $10,000 to put on this event and bring all these people. I said, we'll do it. So what we did is we made a video. I'm going to show you the video for them. Because he rang me and he said, we've got to do something for you. I said, no, we just want to do it. Because when we went to these countries, actually coming out of Europe in 2015, we felt like we were so privileged with what God had given us that with privilege comes responsibility. And we need to understand as the church, we've become privileged. We actually here at Audacious, I was talking to some of the guys last night, we've risen in our capacity and we don't even realize it. Where we were 20 years ago as individuals and where we are today, God has grown our capacity, grown our finances, grown our ability to see certain things, different jobs, different settings. But we get so caught up in where we're at that we forget there's a bigger picture that God has for us. And so I was in So he said, would you send a video? So I said, sure. And I said to the team, what video can we send? Well, we didn't really have one, so we made a video for them to let them know of what we've been doing in Fiji and how we want to come and serve the country of Fiji. So I want to show you this because it's going to marry into what I'm about to talk about in just a moment. So have a look at this video. This has not been showed anywhere else. And it has a little bit at the end that's for that meeting, not for you, okay? But you'll know the person who speaks.
Hello, Fiji. I hope you're doing good. You're about to meet me. My name is Reggie. You've heard of Planetshakers and you've heard of Believe, but we're coming together this August to come to Fiji, to come to your schools and to be in your town, and we're just coming to bring hope. I hope you get involved because guess what? Wherever I go, it's a good time.
So what you don't know is Fiji. So the Council of Churches at that point just wanted something paid for. But actually we paid for that, and what we didn't realise, they said, we want to host you now. Would you come back and we'll put on our breakfast? So I flew over and there were 75 leaders there, including the Deputy Prime Minister of the nation, and we spoke about what we were going to do in August. But remember, we didn't have the church on board. And as I'm speaking, the Deputy Prime Minister is sort of sitting on the front row and he says, can I say something? Which is, nobody do that today, say, can I say something? This is my moment, not your moment, but he's the Deputy Prime Minister of the nation. You can't sort of go, no, sir, wait your turn. So I said, sure, come up. And he came up and he said, we have a desperate need in our nation for young people to be transformed. We've been asking God for something to happen. Here they are. You as church leaders have got to change. And then he sat down. And then I have to speak some more. I'm like, I don't know what else to say now. And I spoke. And at the end, these different people were coming up. This lady comes up to me and says, that was so good. And I made a comment about kids. And she said to me, I said, how are your kids going? She goes, my kids are going well. I said, will your kids participate in the event at the end of the year? And she said, oh, they definitely will. But not just my 4 natural kids, my 400,000 kids, because I'm the head of the school system in this nation, and we are going to get every school on board. Well, she's true to her word. Last week we signed off on being in every school in the nation in August, which is only 6 weeks away, that we're actually going to go through. But here's the thing. Then this other lady comes up, the Catholic. I said to her, hey, what do you do? She says, I write a little publication for the Catholic Church. And I said, oh, that's great. She said, it's old school. It's written, not like your video stuff. And I said, oh, what do you do? And she said, oh, I write this stuff, and I've been doing it for 30 years. She said, there's a few readers. I said, how many do you distribute? She said, oh, about 150,000 copies of it go out every month. Can I write an article on you? In fact, can I get a selfie with you? And here's this like 75-year-old lady wanting to get a selfie with me, and she wrote an article. Well, I want to tell you that the whole of the network of churches in Fiji has now come on board and endorsed not just what we're doing, but we just got approved for our curriculum to run in every school in the nation permanently, 1 hour a week, a leadership values-based curriculum. But you see, it started with me actually having what I believe is the critical spirit that we need to carry as the church of Jesus Christ. Not what do we do for ourselves. The building across the road is not about us having a better facility. It's about us positioning ourselves so that more can come to know him. But if we're not careful, we make it about us. I want to tell you, I was in Bucharest and I stayed in this hotel. Woo! I didn't know if I was going to be alive when I woke up in the morning. But since when's it ever been about my needs when I'm actually trying to communicate what God has purposed for each of them? Today, I want to talk to you on the thought of go the extra mile. Go the extra mile. In the book of Matthew in chapter 5, if anyone forces you, in verse 41, to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Now, we need to understand the context. In Judea in this time, it was started BC, before Christ, 62 years, and it went on for another 120 years. So he lived for 33 years, so guess what? It went on for another 20 years after he died. But in that season, there was a law that if the troops came, and they came with their backpacks on, and they walked towards you, then they laid it on the ground, and they said, I need you to carry my backpack. By law, you had to carry it for for a mile. Now, a mile obviously is a long way, and if you've ever seen these backpacks, they are big. I mean, these things are huge and they're very heavy. And, if you dropped it at the feet of somebody who didn't have much muscle power, some of you men around here, it would not be easy for you to carry it that distance. That was a joke, in case you're wondering. Some of you looked at me like, is he allowed to say that? Well, if I'd said women, you would have been even more upset. So I said men. And so he carried these packs. But the people were complaining, this is a ridiculous law. We as the church have got to stop complaining. We as the church so often are known for what we're against rather than what we're for. We as the church are not against stuff. We are for people, and there's things that we don't believe in, but right now in a climate like we live, we should stop focusing our attention on what we don't like and start focusing on what we do like. In Australia, I have the privilege of leading our charitable arm that blew up during COVID from feeding about 100 people to feeding 3,500. In 6 weeks' time, we're opening a new facility where it's probably 3 times as big as this auditorium, and there's now going to be 3 shops that are decked out unbelievable. Like, I'm talking like, if you've been to Whole Foods in America, I can't think of one in England that's the same, but it's a high-end grocery store. And when you walk through, now there's 3 of these components where people can come and choose their groceries. Every Sunday, over 1,500 people come. Do you know that there's a school in our suburb that, the only way I can say it nicely, is very left in its ideology? Some of our church people have taken their kids out because it's so left in what they're pushing. But do you know that the students came to our charity last week? They came to our charity from this high school, and the teachers and the students came and they sat down and they heard about food insecurity. Then they looked at how many people we were feeding, and they're asking all these questions. Then one of the kids put his hand up and said, how do you pay for all of this? And the head, our church partnership, our partnerships girl says, oh, well, we're wholly owned by the church. And the kid goes, tell me about that. And he said, well, the church, people give money, and that money actually goes towards paying. And she goes, that's incredible. Then one of our youth pastors got up, like Josh, got up on stage, and he said, we run a program called No Bull, which is no bullying. And so we run this program, and we're running it across Melbourne, and if you'd like to be involved. And the teacher runs up and says, we want to get involved straight away. And he says, well, you got to understand we come from a church base. That's fine. You can come. What we've seen here in this place. Why? Because if we'd walked them into the church, they would have gone, we're not even going. But when they walk into something that they understand and then they're told the story, they accept who we are. Church, it's not right or wrong sometimes. It's how we communicate. But we've got to have a spirit that doesn't say, we're not going to talk to you. We've got to go the extra mile. We've got to position ourselves to say we're going to put ourselves in a place where it's not what we're against, but it's what we're for, because we're for people. We're for people that are confused. We're for people that are challenged. We're for people that are in poverty. We're for people because that's the gospel of Jesus Christ. We've got to learn what it is to go the extra mile. But Jesus says to them, so if somebody comes and says to you, take their bag, one of these soldiers, don't just go 1 mile, go 2. Hang on a second. The law says we only have to go 1. We live in a place full of rights now. That's all I have to do. Why do I have to do any more? Because we're the Church of Jesus Christ and we want to show people that our Jesus is alive in us, and we're going to go beyond what is being asked of us. We're going to step into something that is beyond where we've been, and we're going to be all that God purposed us to be. Go the extra mile. Let's have that spirit as a church. So I want to use 3 words to help you what it is to go the extra mile. We heard the first in the offering, but the first is generosity. Generosity is an interesting word because as soon as we think about it, we get caught up with money. But actually, generosity isn't money because money is a byproduct. So we shouldn't talk about money anyway. Money is something that comes because of what we believe. So we don't have to get consumed with money. So when I'm talking about generosity, just move your head for a moment away from, this is all about money. No, this is about a spirit. And as somebody who has a generous spirit, always lifts you. I've seen people that know God and I've seen people who don't know God, and they have a generous spirit and you feel drawn into who they are. They just go beyond what is expected. And in Luke chapter 10 and verse 35, it's the great story of generosity, the Good Samaritan. In reply, Jesus said, a man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho. When he was attacked by robbers, they stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. The two that you would have expected to help him because they were of the same, kind. But as a Samaritan, he travelled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him, a different spirit. He went to him, even though he wasn't supposed to, because Samaritans don't mix with people of the day. And when he saw him, he took pity. He went to him, bandaged his wounds, which means he touched and cleaned up his blood. In this day and age, do you even touch anybody? Even in sport now, they've got people with PPE coming out of their ears touching people because what could happen if you touch somebody else's blood? But this man just reaches out, not knowing the man. And when he went to him and bandaged his wound, pouring on oil and wine, then he put the man on his own donkey, which was again unusual. You don't have something that carries your weight, but now you put somebody else's weight on it, brought him to the inn and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. 2 denarii are the equivalent of 2 days or 3 days' pay. Okay, so it would be the equivalent of a 5-star hotel for us today. So this isn't like, the lowest place in the cheapest place he could find. He takes him, and some would say he took him to a place that he was familiar with. So he's a Samaritan of wealth. He took him to a place that he would go to himself. See, the reason we built our charitable arm and we built these shops looking so good, they've cost us a lot of money. In fact, we've got a lot of support and people have got behind us, both in the church and outside the church, but they paid for it. Now it looks so good that you go there. It's better than the supermarket I go to, but the purpose of it is, why would we give somebody who's disadvantaged less? If you understand who our God is, we want to show people what the church is for. And so this Samaritan says, He says, look after him. And he said, when I return, I will reimburse you for an extra expenses that he may have expended. I stay in hotels a lot. You can go to day spas. You can go to restaurants. You can go to bars. You can go to different things. And you could rack up quite the bill in 24 hours. And the man would have heard him say, I'll pay for whatever he expends. How about many of you would have said, I'm not putting my credit card down, I'll pay the bill, but anything else that happens, he's responsible. You see, there's a principle that's being stated here. Generosity literally means giving without any guarantee of reward. See, it's not giving to what we're going to get, giving to what our family's going to get, giving to what No, we just give because we want to communicate who our God is. So we give out of a generous spirit. We come and we say, I'm going to give my very best. I'm going to leave it all on the park. I'm going to do what God has purposed me to do. Going the extra mile is about surpassing mere obligations and choosing to extend oneself for the benefit of others. It reflects a mindset of generosity, a willingness to make a positive difference beyond ourselves. What makes it so unique that we come to church like this is we do it more about other people than we do ourselves. My dad died 4 years ago, but when he was in his mid-70s, he came to church at Planetshakers. And Planetshakers is like Audacious, but our sound levels and our style of music is probably on steroids of Audacious. And so, you know, I go to church every week and our people come out the front like, you know, your guys have here, and they jump up and down, and in our 3:30 service, sometimes we actually have to say from the stage, okay guys, settle down. And you're like, oh, should you even do that in church? Well, they do it, so what are we going to do? No, well, you shouldn't do that in church. No, we want them to be in church. But the reality is they do that, and my dad's there. My dad, when there's Planet Boom, which is our youth band songs, some of the bass lines in the Planet Boom songs are so deep, I don't understand what's going on. It's like, doo, 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 and there's some words that, you know, Noah and the guys on stage, you know, and I'm like, I got no idea what they're saying. So you think, I don't know what's going on. What about my 75-year-old dad? He has no clue what's going on. But he comes to 4 services on Sunday. Well, he lives in Perth and he used to come to Melbourne and 4 services. And I'd say to him, Dad, you don't have to come. Oh, no, I'm coming. I said, but you don't even sing. No, I don't sing. I'm like, well, why do you come? He goes, I love it. I said, what do you love? He said, oh, you know, when you preach, it's okay, but that's not the real reason I come. Well, thanks for the encouragement. I appreciate that. Nothing like dads to tell you the truth, huh? He said, what I love is seeing all those young people. He said, I can go home and I can put my stereo on, and this is how old he is, and my cassette player or my CD player, and I can play my Gaither hymns, and I enjoy that. But he said, that's not what the church is for. The church is there to help the next generation to accept what God wants to do. And he said, it's not about me. When you're old at a Christmas party, you're not the focus of attention. When you go to your Christmas party, you watch the grandparents. They are the happiest people in the room, but they're also the people that you don't know what present to buy for. They don't eat any food. They're washing up after everybody. And it's like, how can they be so happy? The mums and dads, they're the least happy because they've spent more than they've got, and everybody's going nuts and they're yelling at the kids. And then the kids, they just run all over the place and they don't open the present, or if they do, particularly when they're young, they open the expensive present, then they play with the box, and you're like, I bought the present, not the box. But you know, 2-year-olds love the box. I don't know why. But why are the grandparents so happy? That their family are together. They're thinking about something bigger than themselves. But we need to understand, and we need to be careful in the church that we don't get older, whether that's spiritually or literally, and we start to think, this isn't really what I like. Since when's it ever been about what you like? Going the extra mile is going beyond what we feel, beyond what we want, so that we can create a place for the next generation. Generosity, doing more than was expected without guarantee of reward. The second words I want to throw at you are stretch Or stretch your tent pegs, as the Bible says. Stretch! The older you get, when you wake up in the morning, if you don't stretch, you don't move. I slept in this bed in Krakow. If anybody's listening, I'm not blaming you, but it was a bad bed. And I got up in the morning, I literally couldn't move. In fact, we went to dinner last night, and I don't know if you know, I was sitting on the couch and I turned to you and I felt my back go. And I don't normally have back problems, but it was back to that bed 2 nights earlier. And as you get older, you don't stretch, you don't move. I don't know what it is. I'm only 53, but it's like you click over 50 and suddenly there's just pain that comes from somewhere. And it's like, didn't I just lie down all night? But now just to get walking again, it's hard. But the reality is that stretching, we know, is the way that you should prepare yourself even before you go to the gym, before you do sports, so that you limber your body up ready. But yet in life, so often we don't stretch. We just become normal and routine and we show up. Hey, by the way, 11 o'clock church, that is unbelievable. I've done 16 services by 11 o'clock in Australia. Now, I don't want to point anybody out because I don't know. I was looking forward. But you could surely be on time for church every week at 11 o'clock. Come on, I mean, seriously, think about all those people in the world. I preached in Bogota, Colombia a few months ago, and their first service starts at 7 a.m. and it's completely full. 6,500 seats are completely full by 6:30 a.m. And then a line forms for the 9:30 service outside before the 7:30 service even starts. And at 11 o'clock, come on, you can be on time. Anyway, that's my little plug. The pastors will love it. They're just so, don't want anybody to know. But you know, if you can consistently be late, consistently be early. Just make a decision. Anyway, nothing to do with what I'm talking about. Isaiah chapter 54. Clear lots of ground. This is in the Message Bible. Clear lots of ground for your tents. You notice it's a prophetic statement. Clear lots of ground. You only clear a little bit of ground if you've got a little tent, but if you want a big tent, clear lots of ground because you've got a visual of what you're going to have. Make your tents large. We're not getting a new building because that's the glamorous thing to do. We're doing it because we need to have more space so we can have more people. Spread out. Think big. Use plenty of rope. Drive the tent pegs deep. You're going to need lots of elbow room for your growing family. You're going to take over the whole nation. You're going to resettle abandoned cities. Hey, it was race day yesterday. Your city needs Jesus. Gee, it needs Jesus. Some people need some clothes as well, but your city needs Jesus. As I walked through, they obviously weren't cold. I was cold looking at them. But anyway, the truth is that you're going to have to expand. You're going to have to stretch your capacity. You know, Planetshakers, in fact, even here when I came for Audacious opening, but Planetshakers opening 20 years ago. We were in this university building and Pastor Russell made this statement over and over again. He came from a large church and he didn't want to plant a small church. So he said it's going to be a large church and he kept saying it and people were like, he's arrogant, he's this, he's that. And the truth was he wasn't being, he just had this sense of confidence that this is what God had birthed him for. On the first Sunday, it was the largest ever first Sunday attendance in Australian history, 770 people. And they came to church and when the church started an hour late because production wasn't working and there was normal church planting issues and some churches actually that have been going for 20 years are still like that. But anyway, and he was talking about it. The next week it went down to 600 people. The next week it went down to 450. All the naysayers started to say, yeah, you got a crowd, but building a church is harder, brother. And the natural tendency of our humanity is to always pull people back. I am born in Britain. Let's not be those British kind of people. Don't worry, you don't have to come on stage. Pastor Glenn said I can have extra time. So just keep having a good coffee there and just do your thing. They're not really, but anyway. Because we're all told in church, you must come on stage as soon as it gets to the end, or the pastor could go on for 4 hours. I won't go on for 4 hours, only 3, okay? And anyway, I was sitting in I was at this service, and it went down. I heard all my friends saying different things. But Pastor Russell made this statement to me, and it stuck with me.
Good management, natural management is under-project, over-perform. So, if you're believing you're going to have 200 people, tell people you're going to have 150. If you have 180, everybody goes, wow, that was awesome. But if you said 200, it looks like you failed. That's a management principle, a natural principle. But he said, I don't believe in that. In the spiritual, I believe in over-project, over-perform. Because you see, the truth of that situation of 700, we never felt like Planetshakers should be a church under 700 from that day on. People outside might have said, you'll never get to that. Well, on Sundays now, we see half of that many people make decisions for Christ every week, 350 people. We have 15,000 people that attend church in Melbourne every week. Or we can go for, this is what's comfortable, or we can, stretch. When God spoke to us about discipling nations, what an arrogant statement. Not really. Psalm chapter 2 says, ask of me and I'll give the nations. Some of us have just allowed ourselves to believe for something less. But you don't understand, Pastor Neil. We live in Chester, and Chester are conservative people. And these people work hard and they don't really want to go out on Sunday. Who said? Probably you. But that's not what God said. He says that all humanity needs to know him. All of us need to come into a revelation of who Christ is. So we've got to stretch our belief, our capacity, and step into what God has for us. The third word is this, or words, give your all. When you say that in England, it's like the atmosphere instantly goes, whoo. I didn't say give your all. I said give your all. You see, so often when we talk about things that get connected to finance or giving, we actually reduce back. Yet God says you want to move into the place God has for you. Stretch, increase, see the large tent rather than the small tent. But even when we read the Bible, this is what Jesus says about people here in Luke chapter 21. Just then he looked up and he saw the rich people dropping offerings in the collection plate. Then he saw a poor widow put in 2 pennies, a tiny amount of money. He said the plain truth is that this widow has given by far the largest offering today. They'd given in notes and lots of money. She'd given in 2 pennies. All these others made offerings that they will never miss. She gave extravagantly what she couldn't afford. She gave her all. Church, we've got to understand that if we totally trust God that he's in control, we've got to stop being consumed with control because of the things that we hear. During COVID, all I heard was expert after expert after expert telling me what was going to happen. And you know what? I don't think anybody got it right. Now they're telling me interest rates are going to go up. Interest rates are going to go down. The stock market's going to crash. These are experts paid a lot of money to tell us stuff that's not real. There's only one. He's the Alpha and Omega who understands what's going to happen. Therefore, we need to recognize that we're going to put our confidence and our trust in him, not in our capacity, what we can do. Therefore, we've got to give your all with the understanding that he's in control. Don't look to the natural. Don't look to what people say. Look to what he has said, because he is faithful with his words. Now the band can come. Everybody else can stand to your feet. That means for those that are new, I'm getting close to finishing. I'm within an hour. Stand to your feet. Go the extra mile. Well, what happens when somebody asks you to be involved in a small group? Oh, well, you've got to understand my business. It's a bit unpredictable in the evenings and I'm not sure what's going to happen. When I got asked to run a small group 8 years ago because we had a problem with some of our adult groups, I was travelling 25 weeks a year. That's half of the year. And small groups are every fortnight. So that meant, how am I going to do this? I had to readjust all of my travel schedule and be involved in this process. And you know, that small group had 14 people on the list. By the time we finished in 6 months, there was 85 people. I used to have chairs in my lounge room, and literally I'd open the back doors in summer and people would sit out in the veranda while we were having small group, not church. Because my measure was, well, if there's people to reach, I'm going to reach everybody I possibly can. But you know, my mindset wasn't, what am I going to be able to contain? It was, what can I do here? So I'd get people and I'd invite them to my small group. And I'd say, you're on car park today. And they go, car park, it's a small group. Yes, my garden is so small that I need to get 8 cars on it. You've got to guide them in so we make sure we get them. And then down the street, there's a little car park. You know, if there's a way you could actually bring people down, but if it's late at night, make sure that you walk, you know, people back to their cars. What? It's a small group. That's church, not small group. No. I wanted to reach as many people as I could. You see, we've got to stretch in our capacity. Oh, but I don't even know if I can. Come on, you can. Because when you stretch, ask every girl that's had a baby. There is no way that they think that they can have a baby. Right to the minute they're about to have one. And then it's amazing. They go through the birthing process, and within a second of having the baby, and most girls have totally forgotten the whole process. I want another one. And then they have about 3 months with the baby. I don't want another one, but in that moment. Because there's something in us that actually has the ability to enlarge beyond what we naturally. In fact, there's something in us that says we want to, because we all want to exist with a generous spirit. If I told you about the 450 boys that live in the farms that I'm running in Papua New Guinea, and the 160 staff who live off less than 10p an hour, 40 hours a week, you would all go, can we give to that? But there's somebody who lives next door who's destitute. It's right here in Chester, in this region. You're walking around Cheshire Oaks. It's one of my favourite places to go. You can tell there's people with money. They're all going to the outlet malls, but they want to spend their money. But as you walk past them, don't assume they got money so they're okay. Those people are destitute in their spirit. And they need someone who will say, I'm going to reach them. I'm going to step out and I'm going to do something for them. You see, people come into a church like this and they go, well, it's not what I expected. Exactly. But if you never invite them, how are we going to actually see more come in? Go the extra mile. Get to church at 10:45. That's a joke, sort of. And get to church at 10:45. I can serve, I can do something. I can go beyond. I'm going to drive the kids to youth group. I'm going to drive the kids to the Manchester event that's happening. I'm going to be involved in there. I'm going to go the extra mile. Why? Because Jesus said we're his disciples, and his disciples don't just do what they're told. They go beyond, they go above, and they step into what it is. Parents, the first thing that we teach our kids is to share. Because they go, mine. But we go, no, come on, share. Come on, go above, go beyond. Share with your friends. And then we hold on to things ourselves. Come on. Whether it's an offering, it's using our vehicle, it's talking to somebody, it's reaching out and praying for someone that's sick and seeing them recover. There's always a cost. But in the kingdom, going the extra mile is far better than staying where we are. We're going to stretch into what God has purposed us to be. Don't allow ourselves to become small. Stretch into what God has for us. So I'm going to pray right now. But before I pray, I was in what's the other place? I was in Bucharest, Romania. Communism to 89. But the truth is that there's probably 60% of the population that still live with a communist mindset. Do you know, I talked to people there that were still saying it was better when it was communism. We all had a job. They couldn't leave the country. They had no freedom. But they remember the positive, what they remember, rather than what the reality is. I talked to the young people and they're talking about the IT environment and how much opportunity there is in Europe. And there's this like opposing force. But if we're not careful, we settle into what we feel secure with rather than what God purposed for us. And to step into what God purposed for us, we've got to stretch. And I want to pray for people to have a mindset shift. I'm from Australia. Often people say it's all right for you in Australia. No, it's not. I was brought up in a family home. My dad talked, "Hey, by Gumlad, it's so good to see you. What's happening here then? Yeah, I don't know if we can do that, you know." And I lived in a very insulated environment. They tried to make it like a coal mining English home. To break out of that was tough until my dad got older, and then he started to break his mindset as he got a revelation of who God was in his life. Today, I don't care whether you've been saved for 20 years or you've just got saved or you're here today and you don't even know Jesus. The first thing you've got to do is open your mind to say, I'm prepared to stretch to a new level. See, moving into a new building is not about the people that aren't here yet alone. It's about you. Because you're going to go there and it feels really comfortable in here right now. You've got used to sort of what section you're in. Some of you sit in the same seat. In fact, if somebody else sat in your seat, you'd be like, "Oi, what are you doing here?" Not in this church, I know, but other churches, that's what happened. Because we become comfortable by nature. But when we go to the new building, I guarantee you the first 3 months, it's going to feel ugly in church. We're going to like, do we make the right decision? This place is too big. What's going on? That doesn't look good. It sounds terrible. Wow, what's going on here? Oh, I used to like it back across the street. And the worst thing is you're going to be able to see the street. Human nature. Grass is always greener where we came from. But when you go back, it's never what you thought it was. Remember, we are Christians, and in Christianity, we have the spiritual armor on. And when you turn around in the spiritual armor, there's nothing on the back. There's a breastplate of righteousness and shoes, there's a helmet of salvation and shoes of the gospel. But the truth is, when you turn around, there's nothing on the back. Why? Because we weren't designed to turn around. We were designed to keep walking forward. We were designed to keep stretching. We were designed to have a generous spirit. We were designed to give our all. Go the extra mile. But I'm aware, and it's easy for me to say, but I can pray a prayer because I have the confidence and the faith in God that He can bring change even into your mindset right now. Offerings that are coming. If you're going to buy a building, offerings are coming. You better get used to it. They're going to come. You've got to pay for it somehow. So you could either be, well, it's not me. I don't really have any disposable income. Or you can go, God, this is an opportunity for me to stretch. Because I want to tell you, what I see in Audacious Church today to what I saw 20 years ago is completely different. People prospering, people expanding, because what they did expanded their capacity. So right now you say, God, would you stretch my mindset? Give me a bigger way of thinking. Position me for what you have planned. You just lift your hands and I'm going to pray a prayer and we're going to believe that something's going to shift over the atmosphere. God, I pray that we are of this world, but we're not in this world. We're in this world, but we're not of this world. In other words, God, we're here and we play our part, but we've chosen to live according to kingdom culture, not according to the culture of the day. So I pray right now that you would release people of limiting mindsets. I pray a generous spirit would come alive in people. I pray that right across this room, people would understand what it is to stretch and believe you for more, not just for a bigger house or a bigger car, but God, a greater influence for the kingdom's sake. God, I pray that they would understand what it is to give their all, not just go 1 mile, but go the extra mile. So God, right now I pray, increase their heart, their capacity, so they can step into all you have for them. In Jesus' name. Now we're going to pray for this area.
We're going to pray that God does something supernatural in Chester, that the church wouldn't just be a new building, but it would explode into all God has for us. So I want you to get a name of a person, a family member who doesn't know Jesus, who needs help at this time, who needs a breakthrough in their life right now. And we're going to believe that this house is going to be a house that stretches beyond just having church on Sunday, but actually impacts people's lives, feeding people that need feeding. This new program in the schools with young people, I pray that the church will become the leader of that. Lord, the leader of schools and the leader of young people that are lost and need Jesus right
right now. God, I pray for the elderly in the community, God, that they would understand what it is to be loved and cared for in this season. God, I pray specifically for families, Lord, that the marriage breakdown would stop in this region and there'd be something that shifts over the region where people stay together. God, we dare to believe that we can stretch into all you have for us. We can step into a new day, and we stand together believing that we can go the extra mile in Jesus' name. In Jesus' name.
Thank you for listening to this Audacious podcast. For any more information, visit us online, audaciouschurch.com. We'd love for you to join us at one of our campuses, Manchester, Chester, or online, every Sunday, 10 a.m. and 12 p.m.